Hello and welcome to Game Develop Repeat, the podcast where we talk about a game I love, what makes it special, and what we, as game developers, can learn from it. I'm your host, Chris, and in today's episode, I will be using the legendary PlayStation game Parappa the Rapper to prove to you that there is no such thing as a bad idea. For those of you who have never heard of Parappa the Rapper, you are in for a ride. A great, wonderful, wild ride through this video game. I would recommend looking it up. It is a short title. Perhaps you want to play it, but I would say this is a game where, unless you're very invested in rhythm games and like the weird, wacky experience of these characters, this is one that doesn't have to be played. You can get a large amount of the experience from watching gameplay of this game. But it was a rhythm game released in 97 for the North American and European regions, and then 96, end of 96 for Japan. This game is a wild trip. You play as a dog who would like to woo his romantic interest, and you're preparing for this by rapping in different situations while, I guess, learning life skills. The first thing you do is learn some karate. Your dog learns karate from an onion. It should be noted that the art style is profoundly charming. It is so charming. It's got these very vibrant, highly saturated characters that have like just enough cartoony, cute vibe to them. And they're all flat pieces of paper, and that's done very intentionally. So like if they rotate, you can see that they are a flat sheet of paper with art drawn on the front of them, which is nice. It all looks very crude in the most charming way. And I would encourage you to at least go to like the Wikipedia article of it and just look at like a picture from the game. I remember the gameplay itself being a little bit crude. I remember having trouble with the timing and being like, why isn't it doing exactly what I say to do when I do it? I'm not sure if that's just childhood memory and me being bad at the game as a kid and having absolutely zero rhythm. But I do remember it feeling like it wasn't reacting exactly how I wanted to. Now, according to this Wikipedia article, it is considered the first true rhythm game. So it would make sense for it to have some issues as far as smoothness or latency or what have you. And it was released in 97. There are ways to play this now. I'm now seeing there's apparently a remastered version of the original game for PlayStation 4 back in 2017, so that may still be available. Hopefully you have a way to play this if you would like to, or at the very least you can watch it. Now, why am I choosing this game today? What is it about this game that speaks to me on a deep level? Because that's the stuff I like to cover on here. I like to talk about a game that I am deeply interested in, that sparks something in me that makes me go, this is why games are amazing. And what sparks something in me for this game is the fact that it is so insane. It, along with games like Incredible Crisis, just clicks something into place in my brain that makes me go, you can make anything into a game. It's the same way that odd anime concepts often make me feel. Somebody will make an anime that is entirely about baking bread, and it'll be fantastic. That exists, by the way. I can't pronounce the name, but it's like Yakutite Japan, and even the way they spell it involves some kind of a bread-related pun. It's marvelous what they're able to do with these simple concepts, and you just expand on a concept. And before you know it, you've got a great game or a great anime or a great whatever. Here's the catch. In my mind, I think there's no such thing as a bad idea. There is such a thing as bad execution. And where you draw the line between idea and execution changes whether or not you believe that statement, right? When I say there's no such thing as a bad idea, what I mean is you can give me a one-sentence pitch for almost anything, and it can become a cool game, right? I feel like you can be like an intense battle between a bottle of mustard and a computer desk, and somebody can turn that into an awesome game. There are so many weird things you can make that if you create the correct characterization, if you execute properly, if you do all this weird stuff to make it intriguing, it's going to be good. Why do I believe that? Because Parappa the Rapper is insane. It's deranged. You're a dog trying to woo a flower, getting trained in karate by a freaking onion. And he's teaching you to chop things, but he's an onion. Why is an onion teaching you to chop? There's a driving instructor in this game called Mussolini. All right? That's where we're at here. It's absurd. It's so over the top. It's just every character is some weird, random, odd thing. There's no cohesion in that domain, right? You can look at an idea you have for a game and you go, oh, but then I need to make the story fit right. And like, I don't know, these characters don't feel right. Sometimes you can just go, no, the point is that they're disjointed. But then you have to execute in such a way where it feels like they should be in the same universe, right? You can make a game about a dog wooing a flower while being instructed by a driving moose and a karate teaching onion. And it can be heralded as, hold on, let me read this sentence from the Wikipedia article. Several publications list it as one of the best video games ever made. Maybe that's because it has a lot of historical context, but would you believe that a game where a dog learns karate from an onion and the game is about rapping, would you believe that that's one of the best games ever made? By anybody's opinion, if somebody pitched this game to you, if somebody was like, hey, I want to make a game, listen, I want to make a game about a dog, right? And the dog learns karate from an onion. You would be like, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. This is a terrible idea. I don't know why you're pursuing this. You're terrible. This idea is terrible. You're bad and you should feel bad, right? But clearly, that's not the case. This is why I don't buy into this thing where people are like, oh, well, some ideas are just good and some ideas are just bad. No, some executions are the right way to handle a certain idea. And you might be the wrong person for an idea. You might be the right person for an idea. You might have the right experience. You might be approaching it from the wrong angle. But the core idea is not what matters. What matters is finding something that fits for what you're trying to do, right? This is the right idea in the right hands, or at least somebody who's willing to turn it into the right thing. I don't like being precious about ideas. I don't think that is particularly valuable. I think there are some ideas that should not be shared for the sake of them being like a little dangerous, Like I think if you have a really, really clever idea for evil monetization, don't share the evil monetization idea. That doesn't need to be out in the world. We don't need to make video game monetization more horrific than it's slowly becoming, right? We don't need to do that. But if you've got some fun, creative idea, maybe share it with somebody who you think is the right person to make that idea. And maybe they'll look at it and they'll go, I don't see why that's a good idea, but you see why it's a good idea. Maybe don't share it. Maybe make it yourself. Because if you look at an idea that everybody else thinks is garbage, right? If everybody else looks at this idea and they go, that makes no sense, that's awful, that is never going to succeed, and you look at it and you go, no, 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 there's something here, and I see it, you might find something. I'm not saying you will. You might do a terrible job, but you might start executing on it, and then you'll find that little piece that intrigued you. And the whole idea doesn't need to work. You're just mining for gold. You're just going through this and you're going, what is it that's shiny in here? What is this part of this idea that is appealing to me? How can I get all this other stuff off of it? Let me figure it out. Let me test it. Let me see if I can track it down and then learn from that. Don't worry about this idea panning out. Try the idea. Discover what it is about it that appealed to you. And if everybody else thought the idea was awful, and then you discover this little thing inside of it that appealed to you, you've just found something that other people weren't finding because they're not willing to look there, right? Or maybe they found it a different way. Fair enough. Maybe they understand the same concept, but they've understood it from a different angle. You now have a unique experience. You now have a unique perspective that you can present to the world. And if you learn how to present that perspective in an enticing, interesting, and beautiful way, or maybe hideous way that is somehow appealing to people, if you learn to present that perspective, if you learn to execute on that perspective, now you've just taken the first step towards making incredible art that impacts other people's lives. Why? Because it doesn't matter what the starting idea is. What matters is what you figure out from the starting idea. And that is what I think of a game that has a rapping dog who's being taught by an onion and a moose in order to woo a flower. Obviously, I've already gone a bit deep in on the development portion of this podcast because I got fiery and I went, okay, I'm going to keep this recording. We're just going to let it ride. But let's go a little deeper with this. We've talked about it philosophically a little bit, right? Let's talk about the development lessons from this game in a more specific way. The art style is so specific. They went, we're going for this exact direction, and it's coherent. It's like really colorful, really wild, really intense, really over the top. And they just went, this is the way we're going, and we're sticking with it. It's not confused. They're not exploring their art style. They're not having this struggle to figure out exactly what it is that they're trying to present. They know and they're doing it. And if you looked at one character from this game in a different context, it would not look as appealing, you know? But when you look at all of it together, you go, ooh, this is a universe that I'm stepping into. Forget hyper-realistic graphics. These graphics are their own specific setting, right? I think we know this as indie developers, but I think it's always worth reiterating. It's not about duplicating reality. It's about creating a new world for somebody to inhabit for some period of time. It's about creating something that draws somebody's attention in, that immerses them in this fictional universe. When you are reading a book, a work of fiction, you are not saying to yourself, this author's really not doing a good enough job of making this world look exactly like the real world. They're not painting every single detail of this world for me. It's not hyper-realistic. I don't see the shine off of the metal. They haven't described that for me. They haven't painted every little bit. In the same way that an author does not describe every single detail of every room that a character walks into, and you still get the full picture, a video game does not need to hyper-realistically depict reality in order to be fun. That was a weird sentence, but you get what I'm saying. It does not need to be super, super high fidelity. It does not need to be the perfect depiction of some world. It doesn't have to have incredible graphics, but what it does need to do is pull you in. It needs to be a good enough depiction that you can understand what is going on, where you are in the room, what is happening around you, what the vibe is, how is everybody feeling, how are all the characters behaving. Look at a game like, what is it called? Thomas Was Alone? Isn't that the game that's just shapes, but it takes you on a deep emotional journey? I got to play that game. I've heard great things about it. I still haven't played it, but I've heard it referenced a lot for this sort of a thing. You can bring somebody on this emotional journey. You just need to give them enough context, right? It's not about trying to make something perfect. This is the underlying theme. If they were it's about trying to make something match what you are imagining. That's what I think. And that's the lesson I take from this. Because in no world is any game perfect. I don't think there's such a thing. I don't think there's a perfect game. I don't think there's a perfect book. I don't think there's a perfect movie. But there are games, books, and movies that depict what they are trying to in such a clear way that you can thoroughly experience what it is that they are trying to make you experience. More lessons from Parappa the Rapper. One, it's really it's really important to charm your player. This is the other thing. We've talked about the art style, and I went on a whole rant about hyperrealism and all this stuff. The art style is just so charming. But it's not just that. It's the dialogue. It's the interactions between characters. It makes you invested in what's going on, even if it's insanely goofy, even if it's just absurd, even if it's just something that doesn't really even make sense to you. You're invested. And the other lesson, I think, and this is maybe a lesson for me personally, because I love this particular lesson. I'm a big fan of goofiness. Anybody who's watched the Twitch stream knows that I like to goof off. Anybody who's listening to the podcast has probably picked up on that, although it might not be as clear because this is a little bit more filtered. But the extent to which this game is just having fun is phenomenal. I want to talk about Worms at some point, that game, because that's a really fun, just playful game too, that's just goofing. There was this era of games right around PlayStation 2 and Xbox, right? When PS2 and Xbox came out, there was this feeling that I had about these consoles, like they were trying to depict a specific personality. Xbox was trying to say, we are a serious console for serious gamers. Look at our hardcore serious stuff. Check out all these shooters. Check out all these hardcore gamer games. Look at how good our graphics are. Let's go. That is the vibe I got from Xbox. PlayStation 2 was like, hey man, games are fun and we got a lot of them. And they're freaking wild. And check out this goofy thing and that crazy thing. And check out, here's one that takes you on this adventure. Here's one that takes you on that adventure. And and that's not to say that I'm correct about that, by the way. There's goofy stuff on Xbox. That's just like the personality that I felt like was coming through at that time. And I think in gaming, there's a feeling sometimes, depending on what games you've been playing and what communities you're kind of absorbing information from and all of this stuff, there's a feeling sometimes that gaming is serious business and you've got to make a good game and it's got to be a real freaking serious game. It's got to be so good and so polished and so everything, right? It's got to be a masterpiece. And it's easy to lose track of the fact that what we're really trying to do is just have some fun. And sometimes you want to make a game that is so wildly goofy that it lets you let go of any preconception of what a game is supposed to look like, what a serious game is, you know? Drop the serious. Drop the perfection thing. Drop the this is my magnum opus feeling and just go for fun. Right? Aren't we here to make things fun? Does it have to be perfect? And let me be clear, I am not arguing for buggy games when I say it doesn't have to be perfectly polished. What I'm arguing for is the difference between a fun game that you were playing with your friends that you made up on the spot, like as a kid, right? Like, oh, this is really fun, versus chess with super, super carefully defined, intense rule sets and hard study and all of this stuff. I think the fun, goofy game can be phenomenal. And I think sometimes we look at a fun game and we try to throw so much on top of it. And I love a game that's just a fun little romp, you know? I love a game that's just a little goofing, you know, just a little like, hey, why not? I love that. And I feel like I don't run into it enough these days. I feel like I need to search it out. That's the other thing, is I think I've been missing it because I've been focused on, I don't know, big AAA things or like the huge indie hits or whatever. Like I want to just like play some people's game jams, you know? Because this is the thing. Sometimes you don't make a game because you want your game to succeed, and you're like, well, I'm not going to make a game because I want to be successful, and my game's not going to succeed, so I'm just not going to bother. But why do you want to? Why are you trying to succeed, Chris? Yeah, now I'm addressing myself. Why do that? Why not make a goofy, fun game? And this is what I love about this monthly project that I've been doing with you guys, where people are jumping in and doing the Mad Libs thing. Oh my God, I got to post a new Mad Libs thing. I'm running late on that. I'll post that in the Discord this week. But like doing those projects is so freaking fun because I have 1 month and it's not going to be good. The game is not going to be good. It's just not, it's not. But I'm learning, and I'm the part that I'm learning underneath everything else that really gets me excited is I'm learning to let go of this game has to be so good. I'm learning to let go of, oh, I have to like pull off all this stuff. There's like this inherent expectation. There's this thing deep within me that's like, it's got to be quality. It's got to be such high quality. Everything has to be a finished product. And then when I give myself 1 month, and most of the time that I'm developing, I'm doing it on stream, it's not going to be quality. It's not right now, not with the skill set that I currently have. I'm going to learn a ton from it, sure. But I'm going to have so much fun, and I'm going to discover new things every time. And not just new things about programming, but new things about my own creative process and new things about my preconceptions about how to design a game. Thank you for listening to that somewhat impassioned rant about game design. I get excited about ideas. I get excited about dumb ideas. Because I think there's not really, in the same way that people like there's no such thing as a stupid question, I kind of think there's no such thing as a dumb idea. Because whatever the idea is, at the very least, you're going to learn something from it. But generally speaking, I think you can take an insane idea and turn it into something incredible. Having said that, here are this week's questions. I'll ask them to you. You can answer them yourself, and you can listen to me answer them as well. These are going to be a little bit more challenging for me to answer live. Well, recorded, whatever, but I'm trying to improvise these answers, so here we go. First question is, what dumb idea can you think of right now? I see a container of like a powder that you put into a drink to change its flavor. I see one of those containers sitting on my desk. So I'm going to say a game about using that as a parachute. All right? It is a game about using a liquid flavor adding thing, like a powder that adds flavor. Using the container for that as a parachute. That's the concept. That's the dumb idea. Now, how can you make it more interesting? Well, obviously, I've got to be tiny if I'm going to use this as a parachute. There's a powder inside of this container. Does the powder occasionally fall out of the parachute so whoever's hanging from the thing has to dodge left or right? Maybe there is a little society living inside of this container, And then when it gets thrown down to be a parachute, they are all being held inside of it by the air rushing into it, the air pressure. So the same thing that is holding this thing open is somehow protecting some of them or pushing them up against the edges of this thing. But they've found out that they're going to land soon, and so there's this apocalyptic event happening. So you've got all these different characters inside of this parachute, and they're all having these kind of internal battles, and they have to align themselves together in order to try to flip the tube at the last possible moment and save themselves. Do you see how you can get to something interesting from something immensely stupid? Because I feel like that was a decent illustration of it, because now you have stakes and characters and ideas and weird... I don't even know what the gameplay mechanics are going to be on that. That's just a story background. You could make that into a platformer. You could make that into like a weird... There's a million things you could do with it. You can do whatever you want with it. The problem is not coming up with an idea. The problem is limiting yourself to an idea, in my opinion. And maybe everybody's going to have a different problem. That's the other thing. And everybody's going to have different problems at different phases. Maybe right now you're not having some crazy ideas, but maybe some other day you will be having crazy ideas. So take advantage of whatever's easy for you now while it's easy for you. Maybe you don't want to come up with ideas right now. Learn programming. Use the skill later. Maybe you don't want to work on game dev. Maybe you want to work on art skills. Maybe you want to work on music. Work on the thing that's interesting you right now. And then go from there. Find out what you love about it. You may not want to develop games. You may find that you love writing stories. Write stories, bud. Don't make games. If you're friggin' loving the story writing element of it, dig deep, go in there, explore it as much as you want to, and find out where that ends. You like sound design? Do sound design. There's a ton of resources for that. By the way, if sound design is a particular interest, I can point you towards some resources. Hit me up in the Discord. If you're interested in the visuals, the camera motion within the game, work on that. You like the pixel art? Work on the pixel art. It doesn't have to be solo developer. It doesn't even have to be game related. Exploring game development can lead you to find something that you are even more deeply passionate about. One of the things I've discovered is that I love this community building stuff. I love creating a podcast and sharing it with people. I love bringing people together a little bit, giving them a spot to interact and to kind of combine forces as game developers, right? I love that. I love contributing to other people's community projects. That's exciting for me. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't started working on game development and then gone, you know what would be kind of interesting is if I contributed to this one thing. By the way, that one thing was the podcast that Zach and Brad make called the Distinguished Humans Indie Game Dev Club. I think I've got that right. That is where this all started. I just went, oh, I want to help them out. They mentioned that they'd be open to a segment. Let me send them a segment, right? This is what I'm saying. I know I've gone on another tangent. Apparently, I'm passionate tonight. Enjoy what you're doing. Explore it responsibly. And become good at something that you love doing. Not for the sake of becoming good at it, but for the sake of doing something that you enjoy getting good at. You know what I'm saying? I've got my tip for myself this week, and maybe it'll help you. My tip for myself is, it is about skills, not success. At this phase, it's about skills. That's all it is. It's all about skills. If you build the skills, the success will come later, whatever. And if it doesn't, honestly, what I want is the skills. I want to be able to make the things that I want to make. So that's the tip for this week. And that's everything I have for you. If you want to, if you have the time to, I would love to see you in the Twitch stream. It's Anxious Buddha Games on Twitch. I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 to 7 First 3 hours are game dev, allegedly. I get distracted. Last 2 hours are gaming. I'm playing a bunch of platformers right now. Who knows if that'll be the same by the time you hear this. I've got the Discord. I've got the Ko-Fi. If you want to support the podcast financially, you are under no obligation to do so. Let me be crystal clear about that. And that's everything. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And I will see you in the next one. Get out there, make some stuff, and have fun with it. See you later. Bye-bye.